So you start off by saying, around the world there are children who do not get the right and care from parents. So the first thing that we want to talk about here are comma rules. So there's one comma rule in particular that I want you to get down because this is really going to help you boost your score when you go in and do the GED writing. So the first comma rule that I want you to know is that you need to put a comma after a dependent clause or an incomplete thought when it starts the sentence. Now, if you're scratching your head, you're not sure what I mean by dependent clause or even the word clause, then don't worry because this is important to know, but a lot of students don't know it. So we're going to talk about it, and here's a quick overview. What you need to know is that an independent clause has both the subject and a predicate and can stand as a sentence. Now, on the other hand, a dependent clause has both the subject and a predicate, but it can't stand as a sentence. So we can break this down even further and we can talk about what is a clause really when I say the word clause. Now, a clause is just a group of words with both a subject and a verb. And the subject is what the sentence is about or who's performing that action. So we also need to talk about a verb, and a verb, that put very simply, is just a word that describes an action. So the last thing that we want to mention here is the concept of the predicate. And the predicate just tells you what the subject does. So the point here is that we need to follow that first comma rule. So when we see that you have around the world is a dependent clause. So in other words, it's an incomplete thought. It can't stand alone as a sentence. So we want to put a comma between the word world and there. So now the next thing that I've bolded here is the word there, T-H-E-R. Now I've bolded this because it's important that we go over the different forms of the word there, because words that sound the same but are spelled differently, we need to make sure we get those right here, because if you don't do these correctly on the GED test, the computer algorithm may punish you and you may get a lower score. And so I don't want you to do that, so let's talk about these here briefly. So the word there, when it's spelled T-H-E-I-R, is used to show possession. And there, spelled T-H-E-R-E, indicates a place. So we'll keep moving here. So here's just a suggestion for how you could do it. So I've shown your original, and this is a revision that you can consider. So I have around the world, some children do not get the right and care from parents. And as you can see, I've just simplified everything, and I used the word some. And so I changed it up a little bit, but this is just a revision to consider. And there's 1,000 different directions you can go with this, but just something to consider here. Okay, so when we keep moving here, we see that you have, in your next sentence, I have bolded some words here. And the first thing I want to point out here is that there's a simpler way that we can write this sentence as well that I'll show you in just a minute. But the first thing that I want to draw your attention to here are your parentheses. Now, your effort's admirable here. You're on the right track, and I like the thought process. But you don't actually need these parentheses here. So let me just show you right off the bat a simpler way to do it. So you could just say family planning, comma, or birth control. So just a little bit simpler, so something to keep in mind here. So now as we keep going here, the next thing that I want to point out is that when we're talking about family planning and when we're talking about BC, so these are both what are called uncountable nouns. And so I'm going to explain what uncountable nouns are because you might be wondering. And so this is important. And so when we talk about countable nouns refer to something that we can count. Now, on the other hand, uncountable nouns refer to something that we can't count. I want to note that uncountable nouns are usually only written in the singular form. So this is really important for the test to understand. So when we go to your introductory paragraph, I have is underlined here. I've bolded your word is. And so is a state of being verb. So I just wanted to point out that you used the correct form here. So is a singular being verb. So good job on that. But the main point here that I want to talk about is what's called noun-noun agreement. Now, nouns that refer to other nouns must agree in number. So let me just backtrack for a second here. When I talk about nouns, a noun is a person, place, thing, or idea. So right now we're talking about noun-noun agreement. And again, that's nouns that refer to other nouns. You need to know that they have to agree in number here. So remember, since family planning and birth control are singular nouns, or we treat them as singular nouns, the next down here, which is the word method, that also must be singular. So I'm going to say drop that S after method, and you want to, after the word method, and you want to say a method instead. So here's how, let me show you how I would revise it then in just a second. But lastly, the last change would be to change to happen. You want to change that to from happening. So let me show you how I would revise this. So I would say family planning, comma, or birth control, comma, is a method to prevent pregnancy from happening. So now as we keep moving here, we go down to your next sentence here. And you say, it used by specific people for many purposes. So the first thing here that I see is that we must add the word is, and we want to add is here between the word it and use. So we want to say it is used by specific people for many purposes, because we're missing that verb here. So remember, is a state of being verb. So we want to change that. To make it a little bit better, we can say it is used by specific people for many purposes. So that's going to be an improvement here. But now the other issue with this here is that we have a passive voice issue. So what we want to do is we want to rewrite the sentence again, and we want to make it active. We want to put it into the active voice. Now how do we do that? Well, we just ask who or what is taking the action. So in this case, who is using it? We know that it's the people. So here's the best way to revise that. Specific people use it for many purposes. So we keep moving now. Let's go to your first paragraph. And I've bolded the word first here because you did a great job with that. You used a transition word to start your paragraph. That's something that you will be graded on, and that's something that will boost your score. So good job with using that transition word there. So I just wanted to point that out. And so we see here in your opening sentence of the paragraph, also known as your topic sentence, you say first the child and his right to care. So this is a good topic sentence here, but I think that you could make it a little bit better here if you explained a little bit more. I think what you're trying to say is, first, a child who's already born won't get as much care. I think that's kind of what you're saying here after I've read your first paragraph here. But I just want to point out that you're on the right track. You're telling me the topic about what's going on here, but I just think you could just be a little more specific here and just explain a little bit more. Obviously, the whole paragraph is to explain and to go more in depth, but I think you could go a little bit more, give me a little bit more here in the topic sentence, but you're on the right track with that topic sentence. So now the next thing here we need to talk about is where you have parents and loses. So this is a subject-verb agreement issue here, and so that is another thing that's important to know for your test. So here's the basic idea. So in subject-verb agreement, a singular subject takes a singular verb, and a plural subject takes a plural verb. So a singular noun means one, and a plural noun means more than one. I already talked about that earlier, but repetition is always good to make it stick. So here's a general rule of thumb that is really important, and this I think is going to really help you out judging on your writing and what I'm seeing so far. So note that a singular subject does not get an S on the end of it, whereas a singular verb gets an S at the end of it. And again, this is a general rule of thumb. So now, also it's important to note that a plural subject gets an S at the end as a general rule of thumb. And again, as a general rule of thumb, a plural verb does not get an S at the end of it. So parents loses must become parents lose. All right, so we keep moving here. Now, the next thing that I want to draw your attention to again is there, and you just want to make that T-H-E-I-R instead. Now, other than that, your first paragraph is very good. The last thing that I would change here, in the last word here, I would just add ing at the end of that. But other than that, good job with your first paragraph here. I really like your writing so far. So we keep moving here. Second paragraph. So first you go second, the mother and her health. So again, great job. You started off with a transition word. So you're really using transition words well and effectively here. And so you're doing good in that you are telling me the topic. You're going to be talking about the mother and her health. But I would encourage you to just go a little bit further. Maybe you could say, instead of just saying the mother and her health, you could kind of spoil it a little bit more for the reader. You could say something like, second, the mother may suffer, health side effects or something like that. I don't know, I just made that up off the top of my head, but you get the point. I think you could just go a little bit further with those topic sentences, but you're already doing good in that you're telling me the topic, but like I said, just spoil it a little bit more for the reader here. And so now we keep reading here. So the other thing I wanted to point out is that mother, you have a capital M here, so you just want to make that a lowercase m. And the reason is because mother is a common noun, and so common nouns don't refer to a specific person, place, or thing. So common nouns are typically just going to be lowercased. So we want to make mother, we want to make that lowercase. This sentence here, I like your ideas. So I really like your ideas. I like your thinking. But my suggestion would be that you could try to split this up into multiple sentences here. Look for places to think about how you could maybe split this up into 2 or more sentences here. But other than that, this is a pretty good paragraph as well. So we now go on to paragraph 3. And again here, you did a good job. You start off with a great top transition word. You have the word last. So again, really good job with the transition words here. And you probably already know what I'm going to say here. You say last, economy, and family income. So I really, really applaud your consistency here and your effort here. So you're telling me the topic here, but you probably already know what I'm going to say. But I think you could just maybe take the topic sentence, just explain a little bit more. Like last, economy, and family income. You could maybe say last, it causes last. This causes hardship for economy and family income. I don't know, however you want to say it. I would just kind of just go a little bit further with it here, but you're definitely on the right track with those topic sentences. You're getting the main idea here. So this sentence here that I've highlighted in yellow, I think that you could try to explain it a little bit more. I think that it could be a little bit more clear here what you're saying in this sentence here. So I just take another look at the sentence here, and it sounds like you're trying to say something like, it can be hard to afford the cost of having multiple children close together in time. I think that that's kind of what you're trying to say there. So I would just try to reword that a little bit so it's a little bit more clear for the reader here. And so then I have highlighted planning parents here because we're going to need a comma between the word planning and the word parent. So next, we go on here to your conclusion. So you start off with in conclusion. So again, amazing job with the transition words here. So good work. So now I've highlighted the word it here. It is a pronoun, so the word it's going to replace a noun. All right, so you don't need to have that noun like family planning and then the word it right after it. You won't have to put that in your writing. So why do I have family and suffer selected here? Well, let me tell you why here. So you have family suffer, and so family is a noun, but it's a special type of noun called a collective noun because it refers to a group of people. So a family, you're talking about one thing, but there's multiple members in a family, but we consider this a collective noun. So collective nouns are typically going to be paired with singular verbs. So remember again that singular verbs are, as a rule of thumb, going to get an S after them here. So since family, it's a collective noun, so it's going to get paired with a singular verb, and singular verbs get that S at the end of them. So we want to change this to say that the family suffered. So then the only other thing that I would say here about your conclusion is that you could consider here in your last sentence here, you could consider breaking some of this up with commas. You might not need so many ands. So when you have a list here, you usually are going to separate everything with a comma and then put and before the last item in the list. So just something to consider here. And also, as I've been saying, I would consider breaking this up into a few sentences rather than just one. Let's talk about some of the highlights here. So first of all, you shared your writing. And so for those people that share their writing, I always say you earned my admiration and my respect here because it takes guts to do this, guys. Everyone watching, it does. It takes guts to share your writing, whether it's anonymous or not. Just putting your writing out there like this, it takes a lot of guts. Number one. And number two, you're really doing a really good thing out here because you're helping other people. Because rather than just trying to keep all this to yourself, you let me put this video out here so that other people can benefit and learn from this advice as well here. So you did a great thing by sharing this. So I just want to applaud you here for reaching out and for asking for help. And also you had excellent transition words throughout the piece here, which that was one of the strengths that I saw here. Also, you had really good structure, and you had I could tell you had a clear introductory paragraph where you told me what you were going to be arguing about. Then you had 3 body paragraphs and a conclusion. So you structured this really well. So great job with the structure. You did fantastic with the structure. That was one of the main strengths here. And so also you had great ideas. So I could tell that you put a lot of thought into this, or at least from reading it, I got that you put some thought into what you were writing here. You didn't just copy and paste. You didn't just flop ideas in here. So you had great ideas in here. So you did a solid job with the structure and the ideas here. So I have a video on comma rules and a video on basic grammar. So I'm putting those both right here. I'd recommend for you to watch those because I think that if you focus on your comma rules and your basic grammar and you keep practicing, I think that you're going to do well on the test here. So thank you again for sharing your writing. Let me know how it goes, and I wish you the best of luck.